The fourth season begins with the Lannisters at the height of their power, while the ghosts of the Stark family's downfall still haunt Westeros. The episode titled Two Swords symbolizes both the forging of new destinies and the lingering destruction of old legacies. The episode opens with a chilling image. Tywin Lannister overseeing the reforging of ice, the great Valyrian steel sword of House Stark. The blade is melted down in fire and hammered into two new swords, severing the last symbol of Stark honor. Tywin presents one of these swords to Jaime. Jaime, however, struggles with his new life. His golden hand reminds him of what he has lost, and even with this fine blade, he is no longer the warrior he once was. His identity as the Kingslayer weighs heavily, as he must redefine himself in a world that no longer fears his sword. Tyrion Lannister is tasked with welcoming the Dornish delegation for King Joffrey's wedding. But instead of the expected dignitary, it is Prince Oberyn Martell who arrives. Known as the Red Viper, Oberyn is bold, sharp-tongued, and deadly. He makes it clear that his presence is not simply for celebration. He carries with him the memory of his sister, Elia Martell, murdered during Robert's rebellion, and his hatred for the Lannisters simmers beneath his charming exterior. His arrival foreshadows blood and vengeance in King's Landing. Sansa Stark, trapped in King's Landing, continues to live under the shadow of her family's massacre. She drifts like a ghost, unable to eat or speak. Ser Dontos Hollard, a disgraced knight, approaches her in secret and gives her a token, promising that one day he will repay her mercy. This brief encounter plants a seed for Sansa's eventual escape. Even as she remains broken by grief, at Castle Black, Jon Snow is judged by the Night's Watch for his time with the wildlings. His love for Ygritte and his infiltration of their ranks put him under suspicion. Some accuse him of treachery, but Jon answers firmly that his loyalty lies with the Watch and with defending the realm. He warns them that Mance Rayder's army is coming, a truth too grave to ignore. The Watch spares him, and Jon steps into a new role, not just a ranger, but a man who carries the weight of leadership. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen marches toward Meereen with her unsullied Jorah, Grey Worm, Ser Barristan, and Daario Naharis. Her dragons, now larger and more dangerous, begin to challenge her control. Drogon especially snaps at her touch, a reminder that her children are growing wild. Along the road, she sees the cruelty of Meereen, the crucified bodies of slave children lining the path. For each life taken, she vows justice. Daenerys is no longer merely a conqueror. She is becoming a judge and a ruler. Arya Stark continues her grim journey with Sandor Clegane, the Hound. They stop at an inn where Arya spots Polliver, the man who killed her friend Lomi and took her beloved sword, Needle. The Hound fights Polliver's men with brutal efficiency. While Arya reclaims her sword and exacts vengeance, she kills Polliver with the same words he once used. "Something wrong with your leg, boy? Can't walk?" Arya's transformation is complete in this moment. With Needle back in her hand, she is no longer just a survivor. She is a killer shaped by loss. Jaime faces scorn at court. Without his hand, many no longer see him as a true knight. Even Cersei grows cold, resentful of his absence and his failure to protect her. Tywin urges Jaime to marry and take his place in Lannister politics. But Jaime resists. His struggle is internal as much as external. He must redefine who he is without the sword that once defined him. The episode ends with Arya and the Hound riding away from the inn, Needle in Arya's grasp, the inn burning behind them. Her expression is one of quiet satisfaction and growing darkness. Two Swords signals the beginning of new conflicts. The Stark's ashes remain, but from them arise new paths of vengeance, honor, and ambition. Westeros is poised for another storm. The episode opens in the north, where Ramsay Snow reveals the depths of his sadism. He hunts a young woman with his hounds, relishing the cruelty. By his side is Theon Greyjoy, no longer Theon but Reek, a broken shell of his former self. Ramsay's relentless torture has erased Theon's identity, leaving behind obedience and humiliation. Rose Bolton arrives and criticizes Ramsay's methods. Fear, he argues, is not the same as loyalty, yet Ramsay revels in his cruelty, convinced it proves his strength. The Boltons, newly elevated after the Red Wedding, cement their power in the north through terror and manipulation. In King's Landing, preparations for King Joffrey's marriage to Margaery Tyrell dominate the city. The capital bustles with color, food, and festivities. On the surface, the kingdom celebrates. Beneath, ambition and resentment simmer. Tyrion Lannister grows increasingly conflicted. His relationship with Shae becomes dangerous as Varys warns him that her presence places them both at risk. In an attempt to protect her, Tyrion coldly sends Shae away. Though his intention is mercy, Shae sees it as betrayal. At Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon remains under Melisandre's influence. A grim feast reveals the tensions within his household. Khaleesi, his wife, despises their daughter Shireen, treating her as a burden. Melisandre speaks gently to the girl, though her eyes burn with fanatic faith. Melisandre assures Stannis that sacrifice is the only path forward. The fires, she insists, show the way to victory. Yet her presence casts a shadow. Piety and power intertwine, leaving Stannis caught between fatherhood, kingship, and destiny. The central focus of the episode is the wedding of King Joffrey and Margaery Tyrell. The ceremony is lavish, the feast decadent, filled with the lords and ladies of Westeros. Tables overflow with food and wine, while minstrels and performers entertain the guests. But amid the splendor lies venom. Joffrey seizes every opportunity to humiliate his uncle Tyrion. He mocks him, pours wine on him, and forces him to serve as cupbearer. The tension grows unbearable, with every insult cutting deeper. Then comes Joffrey's cruelest act. He stages a grotesque performance, with dwarves reenacting the War of the Five Kings. The mockery of Robb Stark's death brings uneasy laughter. But behind the smiles lies shame and anger. Tyrion bears it in silence, though his fury is barely restrained. After cutting into a massive pie, Joffrey drinks wine from the cup Tyrion handed him. Moments later, he begins to choke. At first, the hall reacts with confusion. Then horror spreads as the king collapses, gasping for breath, his face turning purple. Cersei screams, Tywin rushes forward, and the entire feast erupts in chaos. Joffrey claws at his throat, his eyes bulging with terror. With his final breaths, he points at Tyrion, accusing him in silence. The boy king dies in his mother's arms, his body convulsing, his crown slipping from his head. The reign of one of Westeros's most despised rulers ends not on the battlefield but at his own wedding feast. As grief consumes her, Cersei's gaze hardens with rage. She immediately accuses Tyrion of poisoning Joffrey. Guards seize him, and the celebration turns into a courtroom. Tyrion, abandoned and betrayed, faces his family's wrath once again. The episode closes on Joffrey's lifeless body, his face twisted in pain. Cersei's screams echo through the hall as Tyrion stands accused. The Lion and the Rose is both an ending and a beginning. The death of a king and the spark of new conflict. Westeros is once again thrown into chaos, proving that power is as fragile as a sip of wine. After the shocking events of the Purple Wedding, Westeros reels in chaos. Breaker of Chains explores both the immediate fallout in King's Landing and the rising storm beyond its borders. The title reflects Daenerys' role as liberator, but also reminds us how so many other characters remain trapped in chains of power, duty, and desire. The episode begins with confusion and horror in the royal feast hall. Joffrey's lifeless body lies before his grieving mother. Cersei screams for vengeance, accusing Tyrion of poisoning her son. Guards rush Tyrion away in chains, marking the beginning of his darkest trial. Tywin, ever pragmatic, wastes no time. He turns to Tommen, the new heir, and calmly begins instructing him on the duties of kingship, even as Joffrey's corpse lies nearby. It is a chilling demonstration of Tywin's ruthlessness. Kings may die, but the Lannister grip on power must remain firm. Tyrion is thrown into a cell, his mind reeling. Already wounded by Shay's departure, he now faces the crushing weight of false accusation. He maintains his dignity, but the walls are closing in. For Tyrion, justice is a hollow word in a kingdom where power decides truth. In the chaos of Joffrey's death, Sansa Stark flees King's Landing. Ser Dontos smuggles her away, guiding her to a waiting ship. For the first time in seasons, Sansa feels the air of freedom. But aboard the vessel, her rescuer reveals his true master, Peter Baelish, Littlefinger. With a sly grin, Littlefinger admits his role in Joffrey's poisoning. The poison was hidden within the necklace given to Sansa at the wedding. Far from being free, Sansa has traded one cage for another, caught in Littlefinger's web of manipulation. Back in the Sept, Cersei grieves by Joffrey's bier. Jaime approaches to comfort her, but the moment twists into something disturbing. Their relationship, already taboo, becomes even more toxic. Jaime's desperation collides with Cersei's grief, creating one of the darkest and most controversial scenes in the series. Their love is no longer a source of strength. It is a poison binding them both. Tywin meets with Oberyn Martell. The Red Viper has come for more than celebration. He demands justice for his sister Elia, murdered during Robert's rebellion. Tywin, however, sees opportunity. He offers Oberyn a seat on the small council and dangles the possibility of revenge against the Mountain. This uneasy alliance sets the stage for conflict between vengeance and politics. North of the Wall, the wildlings push south. Ygritte, haunted by betrayal, leads brutal raids on villages alongside Tormund. Her arrows are merciless, her heart hardened. At Castle Black, Jon Snow warns the Night's Watch that Mance Rayder's army will soon strike. His loyalty is tested, but he insists his heart belongs to the Watch. The looming battle threatens to overwhelm their fragile defenses. At Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon interprets Joffrey's death as a sign of divine will. Melisandre claims credit, tying the boy king's demise to the ritual blood magic performed with Gendry's leeches. But Stannis lacks the soldiers and gold to press his claim. Ser Davos, ever pragmatic, proposes seeking aid from the Iron Bank of Braavos. This suggestion plants the seed for Stannis' eventual revival as a serious contender in the wars to come. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys and her army arrive at Meereen, the greatest of the slaver cities. The city's gates loom, its walls lined with mocking defenders. Meereen sends forth a champion to fight in single combat. Daario Naharis volunteers, slaying the man with speed and style. His victory boosts morale and reinforces Daenerys' aura of inevitability. Then comes her true blow. Daenerys orders barrels catapulted into the city. But inside are not fire or stone. Instead, they carry broken slave collars and chains. The message is clear: freedom is at the gates. The slaves look on, holding the broken chains high. Their voices rise in unison, echoing her name, Misa, Misa. Daenerys is not merely a conqueror. She has become a living symbol of liberation. The episode ends with Daenerys standing proudly before her army, the people of Meereen lifting their broken chains. Her destiny as breaker of chains is fulfilled in this moment, even as the rest of Westeros tightens its political shackles. Following the chaos of Joffrey's death and the unraveling of political alliances, Oathkeeper shifts focus to questions of loyalty, morality, and the bonds that define the characters' fates. The title refers to the Valyrian steel sword Jaime gifts to Brienne, but also symbolizes the deeper question: who keeps their vows when tested by war, ambition, and survival? The episode begins with Daenerys Targaryen at the walls of Meereen. Her Unsullied stand ready, while the city's masters mock her defiance. Daenerys' army rallies the enslaved within the city. Inspired by her presence, the slaves rise against their masters and open the gates. Meereen falls, not only to military power but to a revolution from within. To assert justice, Daenerys orders 163 masters crucified, one for each slave child nailed along the road to Meereen. Her advisors, especially Ser Barristan, counsel restraint. But Daenerys believes justice must match the crime. She is no longer just a liberator. She is becoming a ruler who defines justice by fire and blood. In King's Landing, Tommen is crowned as the new king. Tywin wastes no time guiding the boy, tutoring him on what it means to rule. His lessons emphasize calculation over passion, patience over impulse. Tommen's innocence contrasts sharply with his grandfather's cold pragmatism. Cersei, consumed by grief and bitterness, lashes out at Jaime. She questions his loyalty, furious that he doubts Tyrion's guilt. But Jaime's inner conflict deepens. For the first time, his loyalty to his brother outweighs his bond with Cersei. Meanwhile, Tyrion sits in his cell, awaiting trial. Sansa has vanished and all evidence points to him. Tyrion remains calm, but his isolation grows. His trust in Jaime becomes his last lifeline, a fragile hope in a world that despises him. Jaime makes a decision that defines his path. He gives Brienne a newly forged Valyrian steel sword, a gift from his father. He entrusts her with a mission, to find Sansa Stark and keep her safe. The sword is named Oathkeeper. Its name carries irony. Jaime, once reviled as Kingslayer, now entrusts Brienne with an oath of protection. This act signals Jaime's slow transformation from dishonor toward redemption. Brienne accepts, leaving King's Landing with Podrick Payne at her side. On the voyage to the Vale, Littlefinger reveals the truth of Joffrey's murder to Sansa. The poison, hidden in the necklace she wore, was supplied with the help of Olenna Tyrell. Baelish admits his role with smug satisfaction, calling chaos a ladder that only the cunning can climb. Sansa realizes she has escaped King's Landing only to fall into a subtler trap. Littlefinger's protection is as dangerous as the Lannisters' wrath. At the Wall, Jon Snow warns of the danger posed by the mutineers at Craster's Keep. Carl Tanner and his men have descended into depravity, abusing Craster's wives and daughters. Their cruelty is laid bare when they abandon a newborn child in the woods as a sacrifice. The baby's cries draw a White Walker. The creature lifts the child and carries him across frozen wastelands to an icy altar. In a chilling moment, the child's eyes turn blue, the making of another servant of the dead. This sequence confirms the terrifying power of the others and foreshadows the true war to come. On the road, Arya sharpens her skills with Needle, growing colder and more ruthless. The Hound continues to teach her harsh lessons about survival. Their bond deepens, twisted between hostility and reluctant trust. Arya's transformation from girl to killer continues. The episode closes with the White Walker carrying the baby into a frozen temple. The creature touches the child's face, and the infant's eyes blaze an icy blue. This haunting image confirms that the greatest threat to humanity is no longer political intrigue, but the cold march of the dead. This episode explores the aftermath of Joffrey's death, the coronation of Tommen, and the shifting balance of power across Westeros and Essos. First of His Name highlights themes of legacy, loyalty, and identity. The episode opens with Tommen Baratheon's coronation. The young boy, innocent and untested, is presented as the new king of the Seven Kingdoms. The people of King's Landing welcome him with relief. After the cruelty of Joffrey, Tommen's gentle demeanor offers hope. Yet behind the crown, it is Tywin Lannister who holds the reins of power. He wastes no time in positioning Tommen as a figurehead, while ensuring the true governance remains in his hands. Cersei begins to play her own political game. First, she approaches Margaery Tyrell, feigning warmth, and assures her that she will indeed become queen. This scene demonstrates Cersei's ability to cloak control with apparent generosity. Next, she seeks out Oberyn Martell. Their conversation is layered with tension. Oberyn's grief for his sister Elia lingers, yet Cersei appeals to his softer side by speaking of her daughter Myrcella, who lives in Dorne. The exchange hints at both diplomacy and manipulation. Finally, Cersei confronts Tywin. Here, the truth of the Lannisters' vulnerability surfaces. The family's wealth has been drained, and their debts to the Iron Bank of Braavos are immense. Even the most powerful house in Westeros is chained by gold. Meanwhile, Sansa Stark arrives at the Eyrie with Peter Baelish. They are greeted by her aunt, Lysa Arryn, whose unstable nature quickly surfaces. Lysa warmly welcomes Sansa, but soon reveals her paranoia and obsessive love for Peter. In a startling moment, she declares that she and Peter will marry immediately and insists Sansa will wed her son, Robin Arryn. Sansa, already a pawn in countless schemes, realizes her new prison may be even more dangerous. Later, Peter hints at his own role in the chaos. He suggests that it was his manipulation that set the stage for Joffrey's death, and much more. For Sansa, trust becomes more elusive than ever. On the road, Arya Stark continues her ritual of reciting her list of those she intends to kill. Her nightly chant shows how vengeance has become her identity. The Hound mocks her, insisting that names will not keep her alive. Their uneasy bond deepens, part antagonistic, part mentor-apprentice. Arya trains with Needle, but the Hound reminds her that survival requires brutality, not elegance. Arya's journey toward becoming a killer accelerates. Brienne of Tarth and Podrick Payne begin their travels together. Podrick's clumsiness frustrates Brienne, but his loyalty becomes clear. Though inexperienced, his devotion mirrors the very values Brienne upholds: honor and service. Their relationship begins as one of imbalance, but evolves toward mutual respect. At the Wall, Jon Snow rallies the Night's Watch to strike against the traitors at Craster's Keep. The mutineers, led by Carl Tanner, continue their cruelty, exploiting Craster's wives and desecrating the keep. The women endure with quiet suffering, their only hope lying in the Watch's return. Jon insists this mission is not only about vengeance, but about discipline and honor. The Watch cannot afford internal rot with the wildlings gathering strength. In Essos, Daenerys stands victorious in Meereen. With her dragons growing and her armies strong, her advisors urge her to sail for Westeros. But troubling news arrives. Yunkai and Astapor, cities she had previously freed, have fallen back into chaos. The chains she broke are being reforged by opportunists. Faced with this reality, Daenerys makes a pivotal decision. She will not abandon the people she has liberated. "I will rule," she declares, choosing to stay in Meereen. Her journey shifts from conqueror to ruler, from breaker of chains to builder of order. The episode closes with Daenerys standing before her throne in Meereen. Her decision to remain solidifies her role not only as a conqueror, but as a ruler. Her dragons soar above the city, while she steels herself for the burdens of governance. This episode brings one of Tyrion Lannister's most iconic moments, his trial in King's Landing. It also explores the struggles of leadership in Meereen, Stannis' desperate search for support, and the broken identity of Theon Greyjoy. The title reflects the tension between human justice and divine judgment. The episode begins with Stannis Baratheon and Ser Davos Seaworth arriving in Braavos. The city is revealed in all its majesty: stone bridges, winding canals, and the towering titan of Braavos. They meet with the representatives of the Iron Bank. Stannis appeals to his claim as rightful king, but the bankers are cold and pragmatic. To them, numbers matter more than honor, and Stannis lacks soldiers, gold, and allies. It is Davos who turns the tide. Speaking from his humble past, he appeals to reason and survival. He warns that the Lannisters' gold will eventually run dry, and that Stannis, a man of iron will and honor, is the safer long-term investment. His words strike a chord, and the Iron Bank agrees to finance Stannis. Davos once again proves himself the true hand of the king. At the Dreadfort, Yara Greyjoy leads a raid to rescue her brother Theon. She finds him imprisoned, broken, and chained. But when she tries to free him, Theon recoils in fear. Tortured beyond recognition, he insists he is no longer Theon Greyjoy, but Reek. Ramsay Snow arrives, half naked and smeared in blood, unleashing his sadistic energy. A brutal fight ensues, and Yara is forced to retreat. Heartbroken, she admits that her brother is dead. Theon's spirit is gone, his identity consumed by Ramsay's cruelty. In Meereen, Daenerys begins to learn that conquering is not the same as ruling. As queen, she now faces the grievances of her people. A farmer presents the charred remains of his flock, slaughtered by one of her dragons. Daenerys, troubled by her inability to control them, compensates the man with gold. Yet the moment foreshadows her growing challenge. Her children are no longer harmless. Next, a nobleman approaches. His father was one of the masters crucified by Daenerys in her justice for the murdered slave children. With tears, he begs for the right to bury his father. Daenerys grants it, but the request shakes her certainty. She realizes justice is not always clear, and every choice has consequences. These scenes mark a turning point. Daenerys must balance vengeance with mercy, ideals with governance. The heart of the episode is Tyrion's trial in King's Landing, presided over by Tywin Lannister. With Oberyn Martell and Mace Tyrell as fellow judges, the court is stacked against Tyrion. Witness after witness testifies, painting him as a dangerous, vindictive man. Past outbursts are twisted into evidence. Tyrion listens in silence, his face shifting between anger and despair. But the final betrayal cuts deepest. Shae is brought forth. She claims Tyrion and Sansa conspired to murder Joffrey, recounting their intimacy as humiliation. Her testimony is laced with venom, and Tyrion's heart shatters. At last, Tyrion explodes. He rises, his voice shaking with fury. "I did not kill Joffrey, but I wish that I had. Watching your vicious bastard die gave me more relief than 1,000 lying whores." His rage silences the hall. Then he condemns the farce of justice. There will be no trial here. "I demand a trial by combat." The court is stunned. Tyrion has placed his life in the hands of gods and champions, not the twisted schemes of his family. The episode ends with Tyrion standing defiantly before the court, his demand for trial by combat echoing through the hall. Tywin's cold gaze lingers. Cersei seethes with satisfaction, and Tyrion's fate hangs in the balance of swords. This episode builds tension through conversations, choices, and betrayals rather than battles. Every major character faces a turning point, and the title, Mockingbird, the sigil of Peter Baelish, underscores his manipulative influence. The episode begins with Tyrion in his cell, awaiting the consequences of his demand for trial by combat. Jaime visits him first. Their conversation reveals both affection and frustration. Jaime admits he cannot fight for him. His sword hand is gone, and he cannot defeat Cersei's chosen champion, Sir Gregor Clegane. The Mountain. Tyrion understands but feels the sting of isolation. Next comes Bronn. Tyrion desperately hopes his old friend will agree to fight for him. But Bronn is pragmatic. Cersei has offered him a marriage and a castle. For once, gold outweighs friendship. Bronn admits with painful honesty, "I like you, but I'm not willing to die for you." Tyrion's sense of betrayal deepens, leaving him with little hope. Then Oberyn Martell visits. Unlike the others, Oberyn speaks of the first time he met Tyrion as a child, how Cersei despised him, how his deformity was mocked. Oberyn sees Tyrion as a victim of Lannister cruelty. More importantly, Oberyn has his own motive, vengeance against Gregor Clegane, who raped and killed his sister Elia. With calm certainty, Oberyn declares, "I will be your champion." Tyrion is stunned. For the first time, hope returns. On the road, Arya Stark and Sandor Clegane continue their uneasy journey. They encounter a dying man in a hut, mortally wounded and begging for release. Arya delivers the mercy of death with needle, showing how natural killing has become for her. Later, the Hound is bitten during a skirmish, and his wound festers. Arya, despite her anger toward him, tends to it. Their bond grows, still hostile yet layered with trust. Arya's transformation is clear. She is no longer a child but a survivor, walking steadily toward darkness. In Meereen, Daario Naharis flirts openly with Daenerys. He pledges loyalty, but his manner is personal, even intimate. Daenerys resists at first, but eventually allows herself to be vulnerable, spending the night with him. Later, Jorah confronts her. He warns that Daario cannot be trusted, and that politics must outweigh passion. Daenerys listens but asserts her authority. She commands Daario to lead an expedition to Yunkai, ordering him to bring the city back under her rule. Daenerys shows she can balance her heart with strategy. At Castle Black, Jon Snow warns of the approaching wildling army and the danger of Craster's former men, who still hold the keep. He insists the gate must be sealed, or Mance Rayder's forces will exploit it. Sir Alliser Thorne dismisses him, refusing to acknowledge Jon's foresight. These scenes emphasize Jon's role as a leader-in-waiting, someone who sees the larger picture but lacks authority to act. At the Eyrie, Sansa enjoys a rare moment of peace. In the snowy courtyard, she builds a small replica of Winterfell, recalling her lost home. The moment is innocent, fragile, and deeply nostalgic. Peter Baelish approaches. He confesses he has only ever loved one woman, Catelyn Stark. Then, in a shocking move, he kisses Sansa. Their brief, unsettling intimacy is witnessed by Lysa Arryn. Consumed by jealousy and madness, Lysa drags Sansa to the moon door, threatening to cast her into the abyss. At the last moment, Peter intervenes. He calms Lysa, only to betray her with chilling precision. Whispering, "I have only ever loved one woman. Your sister." He pushes her through the moon door. Lysa's scream echoes as she plummets to her death. The episode closes with Lysa's death. Peter Baelish stands calm, his mockingbird sigil reflected in his words and actions. In one calculated move, he eliminates a dangerous ally, secures Sansa's fate under his control, and positions himself as the sole power in the Vale. This episode delivers one of the most shocking and unforgettable moments of the entire series, the duel between Oberyn Martell and Gregor Clegane, with Tyrion's life hanging in the balance. Yet across Westeros and Essos, other pivotal stories unfold: betrayal, transformation, and the brutal reminder that victory can be snatched away in a heartbeat. The episode opens in the north, where Theon Greyjoy, now broken into Reekham, is sent by Ramsay Snow to Moat Cailin. The fortress is in ruin, held by a ragged band of Ironborn. Theon approaches them under the guise of loyalty, persuading them to surrender by promising mercy. Weary and weakened, the Ironborn agree, but Ramsay shows no mercy. They are slaughtered once they yield. This victory secures Ramsay's control over the north. In a chilling scene, Roose Bolton rewards him by legitimizing him. From this moment, he is no longer Ramsay Snow, but Ramsay Bolton. His sadistic grin as he accepts this new name cements the rise of House Bolton as Warden of the North. In Meereen, Daenerys receives troubling news. Jorah Mormont, her most trusted advisor, is confronted with his past betrayal. Early in her campaign, he had been sending information about her to King Robert's court through Varys. Though Jorah insists his loyalty is now genuine, that he saved her life countless times and loves her deeply, Daenerys cannot forgive him. With cold resolve, she exiles him from Meereen. Jorah leaves in despair, his devotion shattered. While Daenerys grapples with the bitter cost of leadership, ruling requires trust, and trust once broken may never be restored. At the Eyrie, Sansa Stark faces the aftermath of Lysa Arryn's death. The Lords of the Vale question Peter Baelish's story, suspicious of foul play. Baelish claims Lysa threw herself through the moon door in despair. The Lords demand testimony from Sansa. For the first time, Sansa steps out of her role as a victim. Composed and confident, she spins a version of the truth that supports Peter. Her words are deliberate, her poise unshakable. She rescues Baelish from suspicion, and in doing so reveals her own evolution. Sansa is no longer a frightened girl. She is learning the art of survival and manipulation. Later, she appears in a black feathered gown, echoing Baelish's mockingbird sigil. It is a visual declaration that Sansa has begun to embrace her role as a player in the game. Beyond the wall, the wildlings strike again. Tormund and Ygritte lead a brutal raid on Molestown. Innocent villagers are slaughtered without mercy. Yet in the carnage, Ygritte shows restraint. She spares a woman's life, her humanity still flickering beneath the savagery. At Castle Black, word of the raid arrives. Jon Snow warns that Mance Rayder's massive army will soon descend on the wall. Every delay, every act of arrogance from the Watch's leadership brings them closer to destruction. On the eve of his trial by combat, Tyrion shares a final conversation with Jaime. He reflects on their childhood, on being mocked and diminished, on the cruelty of their sister. His words are laced with both humor and sorrow. Tyrion confesses he has always been condemned simply for being who he is, a dwarf in a world that despises weakness. Jaime listens, guilt in his eyes. For a moment, the two brothers share genuine affection. Whatever happens, this may be their last night together. The climax of the episode unfolds in King's Landing. The court gathers in the arena. Tyrion's life depends on Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper of Dawn. Across from him stands Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, a monstrous figure of brute strength and cruelty. Oberyn enters with elegance and deadly grace. Armed with a long spear, he moves like a dancer. His voice rings out as he circles his opponent. You raped her. You murdered her. You killed her children. The duel begins. Oberyn strikes with precision, wounding Gregor repeatedly, his speed unmatched. Each strike is accompanied by his chant, demanding justice for his sister Elia Martell. For a moment it seems certain Oberyn will win. The Mountain is down, bleeding and weakened. Tyrion watches with growing hope, the crowd murmuring in awe. But Oberyn's need for confession proves fatal. Instead of finishing the job, he demands Gregor admit his crimes. He circles too closely, reveling in his imminent victory. In that instant, Gregor seizes him. With monstrous strength, he knocks Oberyn to the ground. The arena falls silent as the Mountain crushes Oberyn's skull with his bare hands. The scream, the blood, and the suddenness of it shock everyone into horror. Tyrion's face collapses from hope into despair. Cersei smiles in triumph, while Tywin coldly declares, "Tyrion Lannister, you are hereby sentenced to death." The episode ends with the shocking image of Oberyn's broken body lying in the arena, blood soaking the stones. Silence grips the court, broken only by the echo of Tywin's judgment. Tyrion is left staring into the abyss of certain death, his fate sealed not by his own actions, but by the folly of the man who fought for him. Unlike most episodes, this chapter is set entirely at Castle Black and the Wall, unfolding as a single continuous battle. It is a story of courage, sacrifice, and the struggle for survival against overwhelming odds. The night begins with an uneasy calm. On top of the wall, torches burn against the darkness. The men of the Night's Watch prepare nervously. Jon Snow and Samwell Tarly share a quiet conversation. Sam worries for Gilly, who he fears was killed in Molestown. Jon tries to comfort him, but both know that war is inevitable. Their exchange reveals their different struggles. Jon steels himself as a leader, while Sam wrestles with love, fear, and duty. To Sam's relief, Gilly survives and arrives at Castle Black with her baby. Their reunion is tender, a rare moment of warmth in the cold night. But for Sam, it brings new pressure. He now has more than vows to protect. He has people he loves. Mance Rayder's army begins its attack. On the northern side of the wall, thousands of wildlings light great fires. Giants march forward with massive mammoths, pulling chains to tear open the wall's gates. The Watch panics, but Jon takes command. Archers rain flaming arrows on the giants and mammoths. The wall becomes a fortress of fire and stone as the Watch hurls down rocks and barrels. Yet the giants' raw power shows the scale of the threat. At the same time, another force of wildlings led by Tormund and the Thenns strikes the southern gate of Castle Black. Ygritte is among them, her bow unleashing death with every arrow. The fight spills into brutal close combat. Sam, Pip, and Gren fight side by side. Sam kills a Thenn, proving his courage. But tragedy strikes. Pip is shot and dies in Sam's arms. Sam is devastated, yet he finds new resolve to fight on. At the base of the wall, giants break the chains and force the wooden gate. Gren rushes with a handful of brothers to defend it. In a powerful scene, Gren and his men recite the Night's Watch oath. I am the sword in the darkness. I am the watcher on the walls. As the giant storms in, the brothers hold the gate with their lives. The clash is unseen, but when silence returns, all are dead. The giant and the men who swore to stop him. Their sacrifice saves Castle Black. In the chaos inside the castle, Jon and Ygritte finally see each other. Time seems to freeze, but before they can act, young Ollie, whose family was slaughtered by wildlings, looses an arrow. It pierces Ygritte's chest. Jon catches her as she falls. With her last breath, Ygritte smiles faintly and whispers, "Remember? We should have stayed in that cave." She dies in his arms. Jon's grief is raw, a reminder that war destroys not only armies but hearts. The Watch regains control. Giants lie dead, wildlings retreat, but the wall is bloodied. Sir Alistair Thorne is wounded, leaving Jon as the de facto leader. Despite heavy losses, Castle Black still stands. Jon knows this is not the end. Mance Rayder's vast army remains outside, waiting to strike again. Defense alone will not save them. Jon decides he must confront Mance directly, even if it means his own death. The episode ends at dawn. The battlefield is littered with corpses, smoke rising into the pale sky. Jon dons his black cloak, steels himself, and walks through the gate alone. The wind howls, and the camera lingers as he disappears into the frozen wilderness, on his way to face Mance Rayder and decide the fate of the Watch. The season finale ties together multiple storylines, with shocking deaths, mystical revelations, and decisive choices. The title reflects not only the literal children of Westeros, Starks, Lannisters, and Targaryens, but also the children of the forest, who reveal themselves in the far north. After the bloody battle of the previous episode, dawn breaks at Castle Black. The dead are gathered and the wounded groan in silence. Jon Snow, determined to end the conflict, walks alone beyond the wall to speak with Mance Rayder. Mance offers peace. He tells Jon that the wildlings do not seek conquest, only survival. They want safe passage through the wall. Jon listens, but before any decision can be reached, Stannis Baratheon's army storms the wildling camp. Mounted knights crush Mance's people with ruthless efficiency. Mance surrenders. Jon introduces himself honestly to Stannis, earning the king's respect. It is a subtle but crucial step in Jon's rise to leadership. Honesty and honor as his weapons in a world of deceit. Far beyond the wall, Bran Stark and his companions finally reach the great weirwood tree from his visions. But as they approach, skeletal wights erupt from the snow, attacking with supernatural ferocity. Jojen is mortally wounded in the fight. His sister Mira kills him mercifully before the undead can take him. The tragedy cements the cost of Bran's journey. At the last moment, mysterious children, small ageless beings, intervene. Using bursts of magical fire, they drive the wights away and guide Bran into the tree. There, deep among the roots, Bran meets the three-eyed raven, an ancient man fused with the tree itself. He tells Bran that though he will never walk again, he will fly. The promise is both mystical and terrifying. In King's Landing, Cersei confronts her father. Tywin insists she marry Loras Tyrell, but Cersei refuses. In a desperate act, she reveals the truth of her incest with Jaime, shocking Tywin. For once, the great patriarch is left speechless. Afterward, Cersei turns to Jaime seeking comfort. Their relationship, twisted by love, power, and obsession, intensifies. For Cersei, her children and her hold on power matter more than her father's schemes. In Meereen, Daenerys faces a ruler's burden. A freed slave petitions her. He wishes to return to his master, as freedom has only brought hunger and loneliness. Daenerys reluctantly allows it, but insists it be recorded, torn between idealism and practicality. Then a peasant arrives with the charred remains of his child, burned by one of her dragons. The moment devastates her. Realizing she can no longer control them, Daenerys chains 2 of her dragons in the catacombs. As their roars echo in the darkness, she locks the gates, tears streaming down her face. The Mother of Dragons has become their jailer. On the road, Brienne of Tarth and Podrick encounter Arya and the Hound. Brienne, true to her oath, swears to protect Arya, but Sandor Clegane distrusts her, believing all knights to be liars. A brutal fight erupts. Steel clashes against raw fury. Brienne, bloodied and desperate, finally defeats the Hound, sending him tumbling down a rocky slope. Arya refuses to go with Brienne. Instead, she approaches the dying Hound. He begs her to kill him and end his pain. Cold and silent, Arya denies him mercy, leaving him to suffer. This moment shows her hardened transformation. Mercy no longer defines her. Perhaps the most shocking sequence unfolds in the Red Keep. Jaime frees Tyrion from his cell, urging him to flee, but Tyrion, unable to resist, confronts his betrayers. He finds Shae in his father's bed. Rage and heartbreak consume him. In a deadly struggle, he strangles her with the very chain she once wore around her neck. Whispering her name through tears, Tyrion realizes love has turned to betrayal and blood. Then, crossbow in hand, he confronts Tywin in the privy. Their conversation is tense, Tywin still condescending, still certain of control. But Tyrion, with trembling hands and blazing fury, shoots his father. Tywin dies ignominiously on the toilet, his legacy undone by the son he despised. Tyrion, shattered, flees the city with Varys' help. As the bells toll, Varys realizes the chaos that will follow and joins Tyrion aboard the ship, sealing both their fates in exile. The season ends with Arya alone, holding the iron coin Jaqen H'ghar once gave her. She boards a Braavosi ship. When asked for payment, she utters the words, "Vala Morgulis." The captain bows with respect, granting her passage. As the ship sails westward, Arya looks out over the endless sea. Her path is uncertain, but she has chosen it herself. The camera lingers on Arya at the bow of the ship, the wind in her hair, the sea vast and unending. Her story, like Westeros itself, is headed into uncharted waters.